Audiobook presents The Symposium by Plato. What is love, really? Join Socrates and his illustrious companions, among them Agathon, Phaedrus, Pausanias, Eryximachus, Aristophanes, and Alcibiades, on a legendary evening where, over cups of wine, some of the most profound ideas about beauty, desire, and the nature of Eros are unveiled. You are about to listen to one of the dialogues that defined Western thought. Let's begin. Apollodorus. I consider myself quite prepared to tell you what you ask of me, because just recently, as I was going from my home in Phalerum to the city, an acquaintance of mine who was coming up behind me spotted me, and calling from a distance, "Man of Phalerum," he shouted in a familiar tone. "Apollodorus, can you not shorten your pace?" I stopped and waited for him. He said, "I was just looking for you, because I wanted to ask you what happened at Agathon's house the day that Socrates, Alcibiades, and many others ate there. It is said that the entire conversation revolved around love. I learned something from one, to whom Phoenix, son of Philip, related a part of the speeches that were given, but he could not tell me the details of the conversation, and only told me that you knew. Tell me, then, especially since it is a duty for you to make known what your friend said. But first of all, tell me, were you present at that conversation?" "That is not correct, and that man has not told you the truth," I replied, "since you cite that conversation as if it were recent, and as if I could have been present." "I thought so." "What?" I said, Glaucon. "Do you not know that it has been many years since Agathon has set foot in Athens? As for me, it has not yet been 3 years that I have known Socrates, and that I have set myself to diligently study all his words and all his actions. Before, I used to wander aimlessly, and believing I was leading a rational life, I was the most miserable of men. I imagined, as you do now, that one should occupy oneself with anything rather than philosophy. Come now, do not mock me and tell me when that conversation took place." "We were very young, you and I. It was when Agathon won the prize with his first tragedy, the day after he sacrificed to the gods in honor of his triumph, surrounded by his chorus. That is a long time ago in my view. But who told you what you know? Was it Socrates?" "No, by Jupiter," I said. "I was told by the same one who related it to Phoenix, who is a certain Aristodemus, from the deme of Cydathenaeum, a small man who always goes barefoot. He was present, and if I am not mistaken, he was then one of Socrates' most ardent followers. I sometimes asked Socrates about the particulars that Aristodemus had related to me, and I saw that they agreed. 'Why do you delay so long?' Glaucon said to me, in telling me the conversation. 'In what better thing can we employ the time that remains for us to reach Athens?' I agreed to it, and continuing our march, we began the subject. As I told you before, I am prepared, and you only need to listen to me. Besides the profit I find in speaking or hearing philosophy spoken of, there is nothing in the world that causes me so much pleasure. Whereas, on the contrary, I die of boredom when I hear you, rich men and merchants, speak of your interests. I weep for your blindness and that of your friends. You believe you are doing wonders, and you do nothing good. Perhaps you, on your part, also pity me, and it seems to me you are right. But it is not a mere belief of mine. I am certain that you are worthy of compassion." Apollodorus's friend. You are always the same, Apollodorus, always speaking ill of yourself and of others, and convinced that all men, except Socrates, are miserable, beginning with yourself. I do not know why they have given you the name of madman, but I know well that something of this is noticeable in your speeches. You are always found disagreeable with yourself and with everyone, except with Socrates, Apollodorus. Does it seem to you, my dear friend, that it is necessary to be a madman and a fool, to speak thus of myself and of all others? Apollodorus's friend. Leave off disputing Apollodorus. Remember your promise now, and tell me the speeches that were given at Agathon's house. Apollodorus. Here is what happened, more or less. Or rather, let us take the story from the beginning, as Aristodemus related it to me. I met Socrates, he told me, coming from the bath and having put on his sandals against his custom. I asked him where he was going, looking so fine. I'm going to dine at Agathon's house, he replied. I refused to attend the feast he gave yesterday to celebrate his victory, as I do not care for excessive crowds, but I gave my word for today, and that is why you find me so arrayed. I have beautified myself to go to the house of so beautiful a young man. But, Aristodemus, would you not be in the humor to come with me, even though you have not been invited? As you wish, I told him. Follow me then, and let us change the proverb, proving that a good man can go to dine at the house of another good man without being invited. I would gladly accuse Homer not only of having changed this proverb, but of having mocked it, when after representing Agamemnon as a great warrior and Menelaus as a very weak combatant, he has Menelaus attend Agamemnon's feast uninvited. That is, he presents an inferior attending the table of a man who is far above him. I fear, I said to Socrates, that I may not be such as you would wish, but rather according to Homer. That is, a mediocrity who sits at the table of a wise man without being invited. For the rest, you are the one guiding me, and it is up to you to come to my defense, because I will not confess that I am attending there without having been invited. And I will say that you are the one who invites me. We are two, Socrates replied, and one or the other of us will not lack for words. Let us go. We made our way to Agathon's house during this talk, but before arriving, Socrates fell behind, lost in his own thoughts. I stopped to wait, but he told me to go on ahead. When I arrived at Agathon's house, I found the door open, and a singular adventure befell me. A slave of Agathon immediately led me to the hall where the gathering was taking place, everyone already seated at the table and waiting only to be served. Agathon, the moment he saw me, exclaimed, "Oh, Aristodemus, you are welcome if you come to dine with us. If you come for something else, we will speak of it another day. Yesterday, I looked for you to beg you to be one of my guests, but I could not find you. And why have you not brought Socrates?" I looked behind me and saw that Socrates was not following me. And then I told Agathon that I myself had come with Socrates, as he was the one who had invited me. "You have done well," replied Agathon, "but where is Socrates? He was following me, and I do not know what can have happened." "Slave," said Agathon, "go and see where Socrates is and bring him here. And you, Aristodemus, sit beside Eryximachus. Slave, wash his feet so that he may take his place." At this point, a slave came to announce that he had found Socrates standing on the threshold of the neighboring house, and that having invited him in, he had refused to come. "What a singular thing," said Agathon. "Go back and do not leave him until he has entered." "No," I said then, "leave him be." "If it seems so to you," said Agathon, "very well. Now, you slaves, serve us. Bring whatever you wish, as if you had no one to receive orders from, because that is a care I have never wished to take upon myself. Regard both myself and my friends as if we were guests invited by yourselves. Acquit yourselves as best you can, for your credit depends on it." We began to eat, and Socrates did not appear. At every moment Agathon wanted him to be fetched, but I constantly prevented it. At last, Socrates entered after having made us wait for some time, according to his custom, when we were already halfway through the meal. Agathon, who was alone on a couch at the end of the table, invited him to sit next to him. "Come, Socrates," he said, "permit me to be closest to you, to see if I can be a partaker of the magnificent thoughts you have just discovered, For I have a full certainty that you have found what you were seeking, for otherwise you would not have left the threshold of the door." When Socrates sat down, he said, "If only, Agathon, wisdom were a thing that could pass from one spirit to another. When two men are in contact as water runs, by means of a wool wick, from a full cup to an empty cup. If thought were of this nature, I would be the one to consider myself fortunate being near you, and I would see myself, in my opinion, filled with that good and abundant wisdom that you possess. For mine is a mediocre and equivocal thing, or rather, it is a dream. Yours, on the contrary, is a magnificent wisdom and rich in beautiful hopes, as is testified by the vivid splendor it already casts in your youth, and the applause that more than 30,000 Greeks have just lavished upon you." "You are very mocking," replied Agathon, "but we shall soon examine which is better, your wisdom or mine, and Bacchus will be our judge. Now, the business at hand is to eat." Socrates sat down, and when he and the other guests finished eating, libations were made. A hymn was sung in honor of the god, and after all the other accustomed ceremonies, they spoke of drinking. Pausanias then took the floor. "Let us see," he said, "how we might drink, without it causing us harm. As for me, I declare that I still feel uncomfortable as a result of yesterday's revelry, and I have need to recover a bit, and I believe that most of you are in the same case, because yesterday you were all among us. Let us take care, then, to drink with moderation." "Pausanias," said Aristophanes, "you please me greatly in wishing that we drink with moderation, because I was one of those who restrained themselves least last night." "How glad I am that you are of that humor," said Eryximachus, son of Acumenus, "but we have yet to consult the opinion of one. How do you find yourself, Agathon?" "The same as you," he responded. "So much the better for us," replied Eryximachus, "for me, for Aristodemus, for Phaedrus, and for the others, if you, who are the valiant ones, give yourselves up as defeated, because we are always poor drinkers. I do not speak of Socrates, who always drinks what he pleases, and cares nothing for the resolution that is taken. Thus, since I see no one here with a desire to overindulge in drinking, I will be less importunate if I tell you a few truths about drunkenness. My experience as a physician has proven to me perfectly that excess in wine is fatal to man. I will always avoid this excess as much as I can, and I will never advise it to others, above all when their head is suffering on account of the previous day's orgy. You know," said Phaedrus of Marinus, interrupting him, "that I gladly follow your opinion, especially when you speak of medicine. But you see that today everyone presents themselves as very rational. There was but one voice. It was resolved by common agreement to drink for pleasure and not to carry it to the point of drunkenness. Since we have agreed," said Eryximachus, "that no one shall overindulge, and that each shall drink as he pleases, I am of the opinion that we should dismiss the flute girl at once. Let her go and play for herself, or if she prefers, for the women within. As for us, if you will believe me, we shall engage in some general conversation, and I will even propose the subject if it seems good to you." Everyone applauded the thought and invited him to begin the matter. Eryximachus replied then, "I will begin with this verse from the Melanippe of Euripides. This discourse is not mine, but Phaedrus's, because Phaedrus has continually said to me, with a kind of indignation, 'O Eryximachus, is it not a strange thing, that of the many poets who have made hymns and songs in honor of most of the gods, not one has made an encomium to love, who is nevertheless a great god? Look at what the clever sophists do. They compose great speeches in prose every day in praise of Hercules and the other demigods. Witness the famous Prodicus, and this is not surprising. I have seen a book, which had for its title the praise of salt, where the wise author exaggerated the marvelous qualities of salt and the great services it renders to man. In a word, you will hardly find a thing that has not had its panegyric. Why is it that in the midst of this furor of universal praises, no one until now has undertaken to celebrate love worthily, and that so great a god as this has been forgotten? I, continued Eryximachus, approve of Phaedrus's indignation. I wish to pay my tribute to love and make him favorable to me. It seems to me, at the same time, that it would be very fitting for a society such as ours to honor this god. If this pleases you, we need not seek another subject for conversation. Each one will improvise, as best he can, a speech in praise of love. The turn will pass from left to right. In this way, Phaedrus will speak first, both because it is his turn and because he is the author of the proposition, which I have formulated for you. I do not doubt, Eryximachus, said Socrates, that your opinion will be unanimously approved. At least, I will not be the one to oppose it. I, who profess to know nothing else but love. Neither will Agathon, nor Pausanias, nor surely Aristophanes, despite being entirely consecrated to Bacchus and Venus. I can equally answer for all the others who are present, although, to tell the truth, it is not an equal match for the last of us who have sat down. In any case, if those who precede us fulfill their duty and exhaust the subject, it will be enough for us to lend our approval. Let Phaedrus begin under the most happy auspices, and let him give praise to love. Socrates' opinion was unanimously adopted. To give you at this moment an account, word for word, of the speeches that were delivered, is something you cannot expect from me. For Aristodemus, from whom I have them, not having related them to me so perfectly, nor I having retained some things of the story he told me, I can only tell you the most essential. Here, more or less, is the speech of Phaedrus, as he related it to me. Love is a great god, very worthy of being honored by the gods and by men for 1,000 reasons, above all for his antiquity, because he is the most ancient of the gods. The proof is that he has no father or mother. No poet or prose writer has attributed any to him. According to Hesiod, chaos existed in the beginning, and immediately earth appeared with her vast bosom, the eternal and unshakable seat of all things and love. Hesiod, consequently, makes earth and love succeed chaos. Parmenides speaks thus of his origin. Love is the first god that was conceived. Acusilaus has followed the opinion of Hesiod. Thus, they agree that love is the most ancient of all the gods. He is also the one who does the most good to men of all of them, because I know of no greater advantage for a young man than to have a virtuous lover, nor for a lover than to love a virtuous object. Birth, honors, wealth, nothing can, like love, inspire in man what he needs to live honorably. I mean, shame of what is wrong and emulation of what is good. Without these two things, it is impossible for an individual or a state ever to do anything beautiful or great. I dare to say that if a man who loves had committed a base action or suffered an outrage without repelling it, it would cause him more shame to appear before the person he loves than before his father, his relative, or anyone else. We see that the same happens with the one who is loved, because he is never so confused as when his lover catches him in some fault. Thus, if, by a kind of enchantment, a state or an army could be composed of lovers and beloveds, there would be no people who would carry the horror of vice and the emulation for virtue further. Men united in this way, even in a small number, could in a certain way conquer the entire world. Because, if there is anyone by whom a lover would not want to be seen in the act of deserting the ranks or throwing away his arms, it is the person he loves. He would prefer to die 1,000 times rather than abandon the beloved person, seeing her in danger and without lending her aid. because there is no man so cowardly whom love does not inspire with the greatest courage and does not make similar to a hero. What Homer says, that the gods inspire audacity in certain warriors, can be said with more reason of love than of any of the other gods. Only lovers know how to die for one another. And not only men, but women themselves have given their lives to save those they loved. Greece has seen a brilliant example in Alcestis, daughter of Peleus. She alone was willing to die for her husband, although he had a father and mother. The love of the lover so surpassed the friendship for his parents, that he declared them, so to speak, strangers with respect to his son, and as if they were relatives only in name. And even when many magnificent actions have been carried out in the world, very reduced is the number of those who have been rescued from the underworld, having entered it. But the deed of Alcestis seemed so beautiful in the eyes of men and gods that the latter, enchanted by her valor, returned her to life. So certain it is that a noble and generous love is held in esteem even by the gods themselves. They did not treat Orpheus, son of Oeagrus, in this way, but rather cast him out of the underworld, without granting him what he asked. Instead of returning his wife, whom he was seeking, they presented him with a phantom, a shade of her, because as a good musician, he lacked the courage. Far from imitating Alcestis and dying for the person he loved, he contrived to go down alive to the underworld. Thus, the gods, indignant, punished his cowardice by making him die at the hands of women. On the contrary, they honored Achilles, son of Thetis, and rewarded him by placing him on the Isles of the Blessed, because his mother having predicted to him that if he killed Hector, he would die instantly, and that if he did not fight him, he would return to his father's house, where he would die after a long old age. Achilles did not hesitate, and preferring the vengeance of Patroclus to his own life, wished not only to die for his friend, but also to die over his corpse. For this reason the gods have honored him more than all men, deserving their admiration for the sacrifice he made in honor of the person who loved him. Aeschylus mocks us when he says that the beloved was Patroclus. Achilles was more beautiful, not only than Patroclus, but than all the other heroes. He did not yet have a beard, and was much younger, as Homer says. Truly, if the gods approve of what is done for the person one loves, they estimate, admire, and reward much more what is done by the person by whom one is loved. In effect, the one who loves has a certain something more divine than the one who is loved, because a god exists in his soul. And from this proceeds the fact of Achilles having been treated better than Alcestis after his death on the Isles of the Fortunate. I conclude, then, that of all the gods, love is the most ancient, the most august, and the most capable of making man happy and virtuous during his life and after his death. Thus concluded Phaedrus. Aristodemus passed over in silence some others whose speeches he had forgotten, and focused on Pausanias, who spoke in this manner: I do not approve, O Phaedrus, of the proposition to praise love just as it has been done. This would be good if there were only one love, but since this is not the case, it would have been better to say beforehand which one should be praised. That is what I propose to make clear. First, I will say what love deserves to be praised, and then I will praise it as worthily as I can. It is undoubted that Venus cannot be conceived without love, and if there were only one Venus, there would only be one love. But since there are two Venuses, there are necessarily two loves. Who doubts that there are two Venuses? The one, older, daughter of heaven, who has no mother, whom we shall call the celestial Venus. The other, younger, daughter of Jupiter and Dione, whom we shall call the popular Venus. It follows from this that of the two loves, who are the ministers of these two Venuses, we must call one celestial and the other popular. All the gods are undoubtedly worthy of being honored, but let us distinguish well the functions of these two loves. Every action in itself is neither beautiful nor ugly. What we do here, drinking, eating, discoursing, none of this is beautiful in itself, but it can become so through the manner in which it is done. It is beautiful if it is done in accordance with the rules of honesty, and ugly if it is done contrary to these rules. The same thing happens with love. All love in general is neither beautiful nor laudable, unless it is honorable. The love of the popular Venus is popular as well and only inspires low actions. It is the love that reigns among the common people, who love without choice, women as well as young men, giving preference to the body over the soul. The more irrational it is, the more they pursue you, because they only aspire to pleasure, and as long as they manage to achieve it, they care very little about the means. From this proceeds that they feel affection for everything that presents itself, good or bad, because their love is not that of the younger Venus, born of male and female. But the celestial Venus not having been born of a female, but only of a male, the love that accompanies her only seeks young men, bound to an older goddess, and who, consequently, does not have the fiery sensuality of youth. Those inspired by this love only favor the male sex, naturally stronger and more intelligent. Here are the signs by which the true servants of this love can be known. They do not seek those who are too young, but those whose intelligence is beginning to develop, that is, those who are already beginning to show the first down. But their object is not, in my opinion, to take advantage of the imprudence of a too young friend, and seduce him to abandon him later, and, singing victory, go to another. But rather, they unite with them with the purpose of not separating and spending their whole life with the person they love. It would truly be desirable that there be a law that prohibits loving the too young, in order not to waste time on such an uncertain thing, because who knows what will result one day from such tender youth, what turn the body and spirit will take, and toward what point they will direct themselves, whether toward vice or toward virtue. The wise already impose such a just law on themselves, but it would be convenient to have it rigorously observed by the popular lovers of whom we speak, and to prohibit these kinds of commitments to them, as they are prevented, as far as possible, from loving women of free condition. These are the ones who have dishonored love to such an extent that they have made it be said that it was shameful to grant one's favors to a lover. Their untimely and unjust love for too tender youth is the only thing that has given rise to such an opinion, when in fact nothing that is done according to principles of wisdom and honesty can be justly reprimanded. It is not difficult to understand the laws that regulate love in other countries, because they are precise and simple. Only the customs of Athens and Lacedaemonia need explanation. In Elis, for example, and in Boeotia, where the art of speech is little cultivated, it is simply said that it is good to grant one's loves to one who loves us, and no one finds this bad, whether young or old. It must be believed that in these countries love is thus authorized to smooth out difficulties and to be loved without the need to resort to the artifices of language, which those people are unaware of. But in Ionia, and in all the countries subject to the domination of the barbarians, this commerce is held to be infamous. Philosophy and gymnastics are equally prescribed there, and this is because tyrants do not like to see great hearts or vigorous friendships and relationships form among their subjects, which is what love knows how to create very well. The tyrants of Athens made the experiment long ago. The passion of Aristogeiton and the fidelity of Harmodius overthrew their domination. It is clear that in these states, where it is shameful to grant one's loves to one who loves us, this severity stems from the iniquity of those who established it, from the tyranny of the governors and the cowardice of the governed, and that in the countries where it is simply said that it is good to grant one's favors to one who loves us, this indulgence is proof of coarseness. All this is more wisely ordered among us. But, as I already said, it is not easy to understand our principles in this concept. On the one hand, it is said that it is better to love in sight of everyone than to love in secret, and that it is necessary to love preferably the most generous and most virtuous, even if they are less beautiful than the others. It is surprising how everyone is interested in the triumph of the man who loves. He is encouraged, which would not be done if loving were not held to be a good thing. He is appreciated when his love has triumphed, and he is scorned when it has not triumphed. Custom allows the lover to employ marvelous means to reach his object, and there is not a single one of these means that would not make him lose the esteem of the wise, if he uses it for anything other than to make himself loved. Because if a man, with the object of enriching himself or obtaining a position, or creating any other position of this kind, dared to have for someone the least of the complaisances that a lover has for the person he loves, if he employed supplications, if he used tears and pleas, if he swore an oath, if he slept on the threshold of his door, if he lowered himself to base acts that a slave would be ashamed to practice, none of his enemies or his friends would fail to prevent him from debasing himself to this point. Some would reproach him for behaving like a flatterer and like a slave. Others would blush and strive to correct him. However, all this suits a man who loves marvelously. Not only are these base acts admitted without being held as dishonorable, but he is looked upon as a man who fulfills his duty very well. And the strangest thing is that it is desired that lovers be the only perjurers whom the gods fail to punish, because it is said that oaths are not binding in matters of love. So certain it is that in our customs, men and the gods permit everything to a lover. There is no one in this matter who is not persuaded that it is very laudable in this city to love and reciprocally to do the same with those who love us. On the other hand, if one considers with what care a father places a tutor near his children to watch over them, and that the principal duty of the latter is to prevent them from speaking to those who love them, that their comrades themselves, if they see them maintain such relationships, harass and bother them with jokes, that the older ones do not oppose such jokes, nor reprimand those who use them. Seeing this picture, would one not believe that we are in a country where it is a shame to maintain such relationships? This is why it is necessary to explain this contradiction. Love, as I said at the beginning, is in itself neither beautiful nor ugly. It is beautiful if the rules of honesty are observed, and it is ugly if these rules are not taken into account. It is dishonest to grant one's favors to a vicious man or for bad motives. It is honest if they are granted for just motives to a virtuous man. I call a vicious man the popular lover who loves the body rather than the soul, because his love cannot last, since he loves a thing that does not last. As soon as the flower of the beauty of what he loved has passed, he flies elsewhere, without remembering either his words or his promises. But the lover of a beautiful soul remains faithful all his life, because what he loves is durable. Thus, custom among us requires that one look well before committing oneself, that one give oneself to some and flee from others. It encourages one to bind oneself to the former and flee from the latter, because it discerns and judges what kind the one who loves is, as well as the one who is loved. For this reason, it is considered shameful to give oneself lightly, and the test of time is required, which is what makes all things known best. And it is also shameful to give oneself to a powerful and rich man, whether one succumbs out of fear or out of weakness, or allows oneself to be deceived by money or the hope of obtaining positions. Because besides the fact that these reasons can never engender a generous friendship, it rests, on the other hand, on little solid and durable foundations. Only one motive remains for which in our customs one can decently favor a lover. Because just as the voluntary servitude of a lover towards the object of his love is not held to be flattery, nor can such a thing be reproached to him. In the same way, there is another kind of voluntary servitude that can never be reprimanded, and that is the one in which man compromises himself with a view to virtue. There is among us the belief that if a man submits to serving another with the hope of perfecting himself through him, in a science or in any particular virtue, this voluntary servitude is not shameful and is not called flattery. Love must be treated like philosophy and virtue, and its laws must tend to the same end, if it is desired that it be honest to favor the one who loves us. Because if the lover and the beloved love each other mutually under these conditions, namely, that the lover, in acknowledgment of the favors of the one who loves, is willing to do him all the services that equity permits, and that the beloved, in turn, in recompense for the care that his lover has taken to make him wise and virtuous, has all the considerations due to him. If the lover is truly capable of giving science and virtue to the person he loves, and the beloved person has a true desire to acquire instruction and wisdom. If all these conditions are verified, then only is it proper to grant one's favors to the one who loves us. Love cannot be permitted for any other reason, and then it is not shameful to be deceived. In any other case, it is shameful, whether one is deceived or not, because if with a hope of utility or gain one gives oneself to a lover who was believed rich, who later turns out to be poor, and who cannot keep his word, it is no less unworthy, because it is to put oneself in evidence and demonstrate that where interest is involved, one throws oneself into everything, and this has nothing beautiful about it. On the contrary, if after having favored a lover who was believed to be a good man, and with the hope of making him a better one through his friendship, it turns out that this lover is not such a good man and lacks virtues, it is not dishonorable to find oneself deceived in this case, because one has shown the bottom of one's heart, and one has made it evident that for virtue and with the hope of reaching a greater perfection, one is capable of undertaking everything, and nothing is more glorious than this thought. It is beautiful to love when the cause is virtue. This love is that of the celestial Venus. It is celestial by itself. It is useful to individuals and to states, and worthy for all to be the object of principal study, since it obliges the lover and the beloved to watch over themselves and strive to become mutually virtuous. All other loves belong to the popular Venus. Here, Phaedrus, is all I can tell you impromptu about love. Pausanias having made a pause here, and here's a play on words that your sophists teach, it was Aristophanes' turn to speak, but he could not do so due to a hiccup that overcame him. I do not know if from having eaten too much or for some other reason. He then addressed the physician Eryximachus, who was sitting next to him, and said to him, "It is necessary, Eryximachus, that you either free me from this hiccup or speak in my place until it has ceased." "I will do both," responded Eryximachus, "because I am going to speak in your place, and you will speak in mine when your discomfort has passed. It will pass very soon if, while I speak, you hold your breath for some time, and if it does not pass, you will have to gargle with water. If the hiccup is too violent, take anything and tickle your nose. This will be followed by a sneeze, and if you repeat it once or twice, the hiccup will infallibly cease, no matter how violent it is." "Begin then," said Aristophanes. "I am going to do so," said Eryximachus, and he explained himself in this manner. Pausanias began his discourse very well, but it seems to me that he did not develop it sufficiently at the end, so I believe I am in a position to complete it. I approve of the distinction he made between the two loves, but I believe I have discovered through my art, medicine, that love resides not only in the soul of men, where its object is beauty, but that there are other objects and 1,000 other things in which it is found, in the bodies of all animals, in the productions of the earth. in a word, in all beings, and that the greatness and the marvels of the God shine forth entirely, in divine things as well as in human things. I will take my first example from medicine, in honor of my art. The bodily nature contains the two loves, because the parts of the body that are healthy and those that are sick necessarily constitute dissimilar things, and the dissimilar loves the dissimilar. The love that resides in a healthy body is different from the one that resides in a sick body, and the maxim that Pausanias has just established, that it is a beautiful thing to grant one's favors to a virtuous friend, and a shameful thing to give oneself to one who is animated by a disordered passion, is a maxim applicable to the body. It is also beautiful and necessary to yield to what is good and healthy in each temperament, and medicine consists in this. On the contrary, it is shameful to please what is depraved and sick, and it is necessary to combat it if one is to be a skilled physician. For, to say it in a few words, medicine is the science of bodily love in relation to repletion and evacuation. The physician who knows best how to discern regulated love from vicious love in this matter must be held to be the most skilled, and the one who disposes of the body's inclinations in such a way that he can change them as necessary. Introduce love where it does not exist and is needed, and remove it from the point where it is harmful. A physician of this class is an excellent practitioner, because it is necessary that he knows how to create friendship between the most hostile elements and inspire a reciprocal love in them. The most hostile elements are the most contrary, such as cold and hot, dry and wet, bitter and sweet, and others of the same kind. For having found out how to introduce love and concord among these contrary elements, Asclepius, the head of our family, is held to be the inventor of medicine, as the poets sing and as I myself believe. I dare to affirm that love presides over medicine, just as over gymnastics and agriculture. Without the need to fix one's attention much, its presence is noticed in music, and perhaps this is what Heraclitus wanted to say, although he did not know how to explain it. The unity, he says, that opposes itself agrees with itself. It produces, for example, the harmony of a bow or of a lyre. It is an absurdity to say that harmony is an opposition, or that it consists of opposite elements. But what Heraclitus apparently understood is that from elements, at first opposite, such as the grave and the acute, and later brought into agreement, is where the musical art draws harmony. In effect, harmony is not possible as long as the grave and the acute remain in opposition, because harmony is a consonance and agreement, and there can be no agreement between opposite things while they remain opposite, and so the opposite things that do not agree do not produce harmony. In this way, also the long and short syllables which are opposed to each other compose rhythm when they have been brought into agreement. And here music, as medicine was before, is what produces agreement, establishing concord or love between the contraries. Music is the science of love in relation to rhythm and harmony. It is not difficult to recognize the presence of love in the very constitution of rhythm and harmony. Here, two loves are not found, but when it is a question of relating rhythm and harmony to men, whether inventing, which is called musical composition, or using airs and measures already invented, which is called education, then great attention and a skilled artist are needed. Here it is appropriate to apply the maxim established before, that it is necessary to please moderate men and those who are on the way to becoming so, and to promote their love, the legitimate and celestial love, that of the Uranian muse. But with respect to that of Polymnia, which is the vulgar love, it should only be favored with great reserve, and in such a way that the pleasure it procures can never lead to disorder. The same circumspection is necessary in our art to regulate the use of the pleasures of the table, so that one may enjoy them moderately, without harming one's health. We must, then, Carefully distinguish these two loves in music, in medicine, and in all divine and human things, since there is none in which they are not found. They are also found in the seasons that constitute the year, because whenever the elements of which I spoke before, the cold and the hot, the wet and the dry, contract an ordered love for one another and compose a due and temperate harmony, the year is fertile and is favorable to men, to plants, and to all animals, without harming them in anything. But when intemperate love predominates in the constitution of the seasons, it almost destroys and ravages everything. It engenders pestilence and all kinds of diseases that attack animals and plants. And the frosts, the ice, and the mists proceed from this disordered love of the elements. The science of love, in the movement of the stars and the seasons of the year, is called astronomy. Furthermore, the sacrifices, the use of divination, that is, all the communications of men with the gods, only have the object of entertaining and satisfying love, because all impieties arise from our seeking and honoring, in our actions, not the best love, but the worst, face to face with the living, the dead, and the gods. The proper function of divination is to watch over and take care of these two loves. Divination is the creator of the friendship that exists between the gods and men, because it knows all that is holy or impious in human inclinations. Therefore, it is true to say, in general, that love is powerful, and that its power is universal, but that when it is consecrated to the good and adjusts itself to justice and temperance, both with respect to us and with respect to the gods, it is then that it manifests all its power and procures for us a perfect happiness, compelling us to live in peace with one another, and facilitating the benevolence of the gods whose nature is so far above ours. I omit perhaps many things in this encomium of love, but it is not for lack of will. It is up to you, Aristophanes, to supply what I have omitted. Therefore, if you have the project of honoring the god in another way, do so and begin, since your hiccup has ceased. Aristophanes replied, "It has ceased, in fact, and I attribute it only to the sneeze. And I am amazed that to re-establish order in the economy of the body there is need of a movement like this, accompanied by ridiculous noises and agitations, because really the sneeze made the hiccup cease immediately. Watch what you are doing. My dear Aristophanes," said Eryximachus, "you are about to speak, and it seems that you are mocking me. For when you could discourse in peace, you compel me to watch you to see if you say anything that lends itself to laughter." "You are right, Eryximachus," replied Aristophanes, smiling. "Consider that I have said nothing, and there is no need for you to watch me, because I fear not making people laugh with my discourse, which my muse would be pleased with, as it would be a triumph for her, but saying ridiculous things." "After shooting the arrow," replied Eryximachus, "do you believe you can escape? Fix your attention well on what you are going to say, Aristophanes, and speak as if you had to give an account of each of your words. Perhaps, if it seems appropriate to me, I will treat you with indulgence." "Be that as it may, Eryximachus, I intend to treat the subject in a manner different from the way you and Pausanias have done. It seems to me that until now men have completely ignored the power of love, because if they knew it, they would raise magnificent temples and altars to him, and they would offer him sumptuous sacrifices, and none of this is done, although it would be very appropriate. Because among all the gods, he is the one who pours the most benefits on men, as he is their protector and their physician, and he cures them of the evils that prevent the human race from reaching the summit of happiness. I am going to try to let you know the power of love, and it is up to you to teach others what you learn from me. But it is necessary to begin by saying what the nature of man is, and the modifications it has undergone. In another time, human nature was very different from what it is today. First, there were three kinds of men: the two sexes that exist today, and a third one composed of these two, which has disappeared, only the name remaining. This animal formed a particular species and was called androgynous because it united the male and the female sex, but it no longer exists and its name is in discredit. Secondly, all men had round forms, the back and the sides placed in a circle, 4 arms, 4 legs, 2 countenances, united to a circular and perfectly similar neck, a single head, which united these 2 faces opposed to each other, 2 ears, 2 organs of generation, and everything else in this same proportion. They walked upright like us and without needing to turn around to take the path they wanted. When they wished to walk quickly, they rested successively on their 8 limbs and advanced rapidly by means of a circular movement, like those who make the wheel with their feet in the air. The difference that is found between these 3 species of men arises from the difference between their principles. The sun produces the male sex, the earth the female, and the moon the one composed of both, which partakes of the earth and the sun. From these principles they received their form and their manner of moving, which is spherical. Their bodies were robust and vigorous and their hearts courageous. And for this reason they conceived the daring idea of scaling the heavens and fighting with the gods, as Homer says of Ephialtes and Otus. Jupiter examined with the gods the course of action that should be taken. The matter was not without difficulty. The gods did not want to annihilate men, as they had done to the giants long ago, by striking them with their thunderbolts, because then the worship and the sacrifices that men offered them would disappear. But, on the other hand, they could not suffer such insolence. Finally, after long reflections, Jupiter expressed himself in these terms: "I believe I have found a means to preserve men and make them more circumspect, and it consists in diminishing their forces. I will separate them into 2. Thus they will become weak, and we will have another advantage, which will be that of increasing the number of those who serve us. They will walk upright, supporting themselves on only 2 legs. And if after this punishment they retain their impious audacity and do not wish to remain at rest, I will divide them again, and they will be forced to walk on a single foot, like those who dance on wineskins at the festival of Bacchus." After this declaration, the god made the separation he had just resolved, and he did it just as when eggs are cut to be salted, or as when they are divided into 2 equal parts with a hair. Immediately he commanded Apollo to heal the wounds, and to place the countenance and half of the neck on the side where the separation had been made, so that the sight of this punishment would make them more modest. Apollo placed the countenance on the indicated side, and gathering the cuts of the skin over what is now called the belly, he sewed them up like a purse that is closed, leaving only one opening in the center, which is called the navel. As for the other folds, which were numerous, he polished them and arranged the chest with an instrument similar to that which shoemakers use to smooth the leather of shoes on the last, and he only left some folds on the belly and the navel, as a remembrance of the ancient punishment. Once this division was made, each half made efforts to find the other half from which it had been separated, and when both found each other, they embraced and united, carried by the desire to enter into their ancient unity, with such an ardor that, embraced, they perished from hunger and inaction, not wanting to do anything one without the other. When one of the 2 halves perished, the surviving one sought another, to which it united anew, whether it was the half of an entire woman, what we now call a woman, or whether it was a half of a man. And in this way the race was becoming extinct. Jupiter, moved to compassion, devises another expedient. He places the organs of generation in front, because before they were behind, and conception occurred and the semen was spilled, not one into the other, but onto the ground like the cicadas. Jupiter placed the organs in the anterior part, and in this way conception occurs through the union of the male and the female. Then, if the union of the man and the woman took place, the fruit of it was children. And if the male united with the male, satiety soon separated them and restored them to their labors and other cares of life. From this proceeds the love that we naturally have for one another. It reminds us of our primitive nature and makes efforts to reunite the two halves and to re-establish us in our ancient perfection. Each one of us is no more than half a man, who has been separated from his whole, as a leaf is divided into two. These halves always seek their halves. The men who come from the separation of these composite beings, which are called androgynous, love women. And most adulterers belong to this species, as well as the women who love men and violate the laws of marriage. But the women who come from the separation of the primitive women are not drawn to men and lean more towards women. The tribades belong to this species. Similarly, the men who come from the separation of the primitive men seek the male sex. While they are young, they love men. They delight in sleeping with them and being in their arms. They are the first among adolescents and adults, as they are of a much more manly nature. They are unreasonably reproached for living shamelessly, because it is not the lack of shame that makes them act thus, but rather endowed with a strong soul. Manly courage and a virile character, they seek their equals, and the proof is that in time they are more apt than others to serve the state. Having become men in turn, they love young people, and if they marry and have a family, it is not because nature inclines them to it, but because the law obliges them. What they prefer is to spend their lives with one another in celibacy. The sole object of men of this character, whether they love or are loved, is to reunite with those who resemble them. When the one who loves young people or anyone else finds his half, sympathy, friendship, and love unite them in such a marvelous way that they do not want to separate even for a moment. These same men who spend their whole life together cannot say what they want from each other, because if they find so much pleasure in living in this way, it is not to be believed that the cause of this is the pleasure of the senses. Evidently, their soul desires something else that it cannot express, but that it divines and implies. And if, when they are in each other's arms, Hephaestus were to appear with the instruments of his art and say to them, "O men, what is it that you demand of each other?" And if, seeing them perplexed, he continued to question them in this manner, "What you want, is it not to be united in such a way that neither by day nor by night are you one without the other? If this is what you desire, I am going to melt you and mix you in such a way that you will no longer be two people, but only one, and that while you live a common life as a single person, and that when you have died, in death itself you reunite so that you are not two people but only one. See now if this is what you desire, and if this can make you completely happy." It is very certain that if Hephaestus addressed this discourse to them, none of them would deny it, nor would they answer that they desired anything else. Convinced that the god had just expressed what was in the depths of their soul at all times, that is, the desire to be united and confused with the beloved object, until they form only one being with it. The cause of this is that our primitive nature was one, and that we were a complete whole, and the name of love is given to the desire and pursuit of this ancient state. Primarily, as I have said, we were one, but afterwards, in punishment for our iniquity, Jupiter separated us as the Arcadians were by the Lacedaemonians. We must try not to commit any fault against the gods, for fear of exposing ourselves to a second division, and not being like the figures presented in profile in the bas reliefs, who have only half a countenance, or like the dice cut in two. It is necessary that we all exhort one another mutually to honor the gods, in order to avoid a new punishment, and return to our primitive unity under the auspices and direction of love. Let no one wage war against love, because to wage war against him is to attract the hatred of the gods. Let us try, then, to deserve the benevolence and favor of this God, and he will procure for us the other half of ourselves, a happiness that very few achieve. Let Eryximachus not criticize these last words, as if they alluded to Pausanias and Agathon, because perhaps these are of this small number, and both belong to the masculine nature. Be that as it may, I am sure that all of us will be happy, men and women, if, thanks to love, we each find our half, and if we return to the unity of our primitive nature. Now then, if this ancient state was the best, the one that comes closest to it in this world must necessarily be better, which is that of possessing the person one loves as one desires. If we must praise the God who procures this happiness for us, let us praise love, who not only serves us much in this life, procuring for us what is convenient for us, but also because he gives us powerful reasons to hope that if we faithfully fulfill our duties towards the gods, he will restore us to our first nature after this life, heal our weaknesses, and give us happiness in all its purity. Here, Eryximachus, is my discourse on love. It differs from yours, but I implore you not to mock it, so that we may hear those of the other two, because Agathon and Socrates have not spoken yet. I will obey you, said Eryximachus, with all the more pleasure, as your discourse has delighted me to such an extent that if I did not know how eloquent Agathon and Socrates are in the matter of love, I would greatly fear that they would fall far short, considering the matter exhausted with what has been said until now. Nevertheless, I still promise myself much from them. You have fulfilled your role well, said Socrates, but if you were in my place at this moment, Eryximachus, and especially after Agathon has spoken, you would be trembling, and you would feel as embarrassed as I do. You want to cast a spell on me, said Agathon to Socrates, and confuse me by making me believe that those present expect a lot, as if I were going to say very good things. By Jove, my memory would be very poor, Agathon, replied Socrates, if, having seen you present yourself on the stage with so much assurance and calm, surrounded by comedians, and recite your verses without the slightest emotion, looking with ease at such a numerous audience, I now believed that you speak of being disturbed in front of these few listeners. Ah, replied Agathon, do not believe, Socrates, that the applause of the theater deludes me so much that I can hide from myself that for a sensible man the judgment of a few wise men is more fearsome than that of a multitude of ignorant ones. It would be very unjust, Agathon, if I had such a bad opinion of you. I am persuaded that if you met with a small number of people, and they seemed wise to you, you would prefer them to the multitude. But perhaps we are not among these wise men, because after all we were in the theater and formed part of the crowd. But supposing you met others who were wise, would you not fear doing something that they could disapprove of? What do you think of this? You speak the truth, replied Agathon, and would you not have the same fear with respect to the multitude if you believed you were doing something shameful? Then Phaedrus took the floor and said, My dear Agathon, if you continue to answer Socrates, he will not care about the rest, because as long as he has someone to converse with, he is content, especially if his interlocutor is handsome. I am certainly pleased to hear Socrates, but I must watch out so that love receives the praises we promised him, and that each one of us pays this tribute. When you have fulfilled your duty to the god, you can resume your conversation. You are right, Phaedrus, said Agathon, and there is no inconvenience in my speaking, because I will be able to enter into conversation with Socrates on another occasion. I am going, then, to indicate the plan of my discourse, and then I will enter into the matter. It seems to me that all those who have spoken until now have praised, not so much love as the happiness that this God procures for us. And who is the author of so many goods? No one has let us know. And yet, the only proper way to praise him is to explain the nature of the subject in question, and to develop the effects it produces. Therefore, to praise love, it is necessary to say what love is, and then speak of his benefits. I say, then, that of all the gods, love, if it can be said without offense, is the most blessed, because he is the most beautiful and the best. He is the most beautiful, Phaedrus, because, in the first place, he is the youngest of the gods, and he himself proves this, since on his way he always escapes old age, although the latter runs very fast, at least faster than we would wish. Love naturally detests her and moves away from her as much as possible, while he accompanies youth and takes pleasure in her, following that very true ancient maxim, that like always joins like. While I agree with Phaedrus on all the other points, I cannot agree with him that love is older than Saturn and Iapetus. I maintain, on the contrary, that he is the youngest of the gods and that he is always young. Those old quarrels of the gods that Hesiod and Parmenides recount to us, if they are true, took place under the empire of necessity, and not under that of love, because there would have been no mutilations, chains, or many other acts of violence among the gods, if love had been with them, because peace and friendship would have united them, as happens at present, and since love reigns over them. It is certain that he is young and also delicate, but a poet like Homer was needed to express the delicacy of this god. Homer says that Ate is a goddess and delicate. Her feet, he says, are delicate because she never places them on the ground, but marches on the heads of men. I believe the delicacy of Ate is sufficiently proven by saying that she does not rest on what is hard, but on what is soft. I will use an analogous proof to demonstrate how delicate love is. He does not walk on the earth, nor on the heads either, which on the other hand do not present a very soft point of support. But he walks and rests on the tenderest things, because it is in the hearts and in the souls of the gods and of men where he fixes his abode, but not in all souls, because he moves away from hard hearts and only rests in delicate hearts. And since he never touches with his foot or with any other part of his body anything but the most delicate of the most delicate beings, he must necessarily be of an extreme delicacy, and he is, consequently, the youngest and most delicate of the gods. Furthermore, he is of a subtle essence because he could not extend in all directions, nor insinuate himself unnoticed into all souls, nor leave them if he were of a solid substance. And what forces one to recognize a subtle essence in him is the grace that, according to common opinion, eminently distinguishes love. Because love and ugliness are always at war. Since he lives among the flowers, one cannot doubt the freshness of his complexion. And in effect, love never stops at what has no flowers, or whose flowers are already withered, be it a body or a soul or anything else. But where he finds flowers and perfumes, there he fixes his abode. Many other proofs of the beauty of this god could be presented, but those mentioned are sufficient. Let us speak of his virtue. The greatest advantage of love is that he can receive no offense from men or from the gods, and that neither gods nor men can be offended by him, because if he suffers or makes suffer, it is without coercion, violence being incompatible with love. One only submits to love of one's own free will, and to every agreement concluded voluntarily. The laws, queens of the state, declare it just. But love is not only just, but he is temperate in a high degree, because temperance consists in triumphing over pleasures and passions. And is there a pleasure above love? If all pleasures and all passions are beneath love, he precisely dominates them. And if he dominates them, it is necessary that he be endowed with an incomparable temperance. As for his strength, Mars himself cannot equal him, because it is not Mars who possesses love, but love who possesses Mars, the love of Venus, as the poets say, because the one who possesses is stronger than the possessed object. And to overcome the one who overcomes others, is it not to be the strongest of all? After having spoken of the justice, the temperance, and the strength of this god, it remains to prove his skill. Let us try to fill this void as much as possible. To honor my art, as Eryximachus wished to honor his, I will say that love is a poet so learned that he converts into a poet whomever he wishes. And this happens even when one is a stranger to the muses, and at the moment one feels inspired by love, which proves that love is notable in carrying out the works that are the competence of the muses, because what one ignores is not taught, just as what one does not have is not given. Can it be denied that all living beings are the work of love in relation to their production and their birth? And do we not see that in all the arts, the one who has received lessons from love becomes skilled and famous, while the one who has not been inspired by this god remains in obscurity? To passion and love, Apollo owes the invention of medicine, of divination, of the art of archery. So it can be said that love is the master of Apollo, as of the muses in terms of music, of Hephaestus, with respect to the art of founding metals, of Minerva in that of weaving, of Jupiter in that of governing the gods and men. If Concord has been re-established among the gods, it must be attributed to love, that is, to beauty, because love does not unite with ugliness. Before love, as I said at the beginning, many deplorable things happened among the gods under the reign of necessity. But the moment this god was born, all goods emanated from the love of the beautiful upon the gods and upon men. This is why it seems to me, Phaedrus, that love is very beautiful and very good, and that he also communicates these same advantages to others. I will finish with a poetic hymn. Love is the one who gives peace to men, calm to the seas, silence to the winds, couch and sleep to anxiety. He is the one who brings men closer together and prevents them from being strangers to one another. The principle and bond of all society, of all friendly gathering, he presides over festivals, choirs, and sacrifices. He fills with sweetness and drives away harshness. He excites benevolence and prevents hatred. Propitious to the good, admired by the wise, agreeable to the gods, an object of emulation for those who do not yet know him, a precious treasure for those who possess him, father of luxury, of delights, of pleasure, of sweet enchantments, of tender desires, of passions. He watches over the good and despises the bad. In our sorrows, in our fears, in our annoyances, in our words, he is our counselor, our support, and our Savior. Finally, he is the glory of the gods and of men, the best and most precious master, and every mortal must follow him and repeat in his honor the hymns of which he himself makes use, to pour sweetness among the gods and among men. To this god, O Phaedrus, I consecrate this discourse, which has been now festive, now serious, as my own genius has suggested it to me. When Agathon had concluded his discourse, all those present applauded and declared that he had spoken in a manner worthy of the god and of himself. Then Socrates, addressing Eryximachus, said, "Well, son of Acumenus, was I not right to fear, and was I not a good prophet? When I announced to you that Agathon would give an admirable discourse, and would put me in a difficult position? You were a good prophet," replied Eryximachus, "in announcing to us that Agathon would speak well. But I believe you were not in predicting that you would find yourself in a difficult position." "Ah, my dear friend," replied Socrates, who would not find himself in a difficult position, having to speak after hearing such a beautiful, varied, and admirable discourse in all its parts, and especially in its ending, whose expressions are of such finished beauty that one cannot hear them without being moved. I feel so incapable of saying something so beautiful that, full of shame, I would have abandoned the post, if I could have, because Agathon's eloquence has reminded me of Gorgias, to the point that what Homer says is really happening to me. I feared that Agathon, when concluding, would in a way cast the head of Gorgias upon my discourse, this terrible orator petrifying my tongue. At the same time, I realized that it was ridiculous for me to have committed myself with you to celebrate love in turn, and to have boasted of being wise in this matter, I who do not know how to praise anything. In fact, until now, I have been in the innocent belief that only true things should enter into a eulogy, that this was the essential thing, and that afterwards it only remained to choose among these things the most beautiful ones and arrange them in the most convenient way. For this reason, I had great hope of speaking well, believing I knew the true way to praise. But now it turns out that this method is worthless, that it is necessary to attribute the greatest perfections to the object one has intended to praise, whether they belong to it or not, its truth or falsity being of no importance, as if we had apparently agreed to pretend that each one of us was praising love, and in reality not doing so. For this reason, I believe you attribute all perfections to love, and in exalting him, you make him the cause of such great things, so that he appears very beautiful and very good, to the ignorant, and certainly not to enlightened people. This manner of praising is beautiful and impressive, but it was absolutely unknown to me when I gave you my word. My tongue and not my heart is what has contracted this commitment. Allow me to break it, because I do not consider myself in a position to be able to give a eulogy of this kind. But if you wish, I will speak in my own way, proposing to say only true things, without aspiring to the ridiculous pretense of rivaling you in eloquence. See, Phaedrus, if it suits you to hear a eulogy that will not overstep the limits of truth, and in which there will be no refinement either in the words or in the forms. Phaedrus and the rest of the gathering told him that he could speak as he wished. Allow me, Phaedrus, replied Socrates, to ask Agathon a few more questions, so that with his assent I can speak with more confidence. With great pleasure, replied Phaedrus. You only have to question him. Having said this, Socrates began in this manner. I saw you, my dear Agathon, begin the matter perfectly, saying that it was necessary to show first what the nature of love is, and then what its effects are. I approve of this way of beginning. Let us see now, after what you have said, all beautiful and magnificent about the nature of love, something more yet. Tell me, is love the love of something or of nothing? I do not ask you if he is the son of a father or a mother, because that would be a ridiculous question. If, for example, regarding a father, I asked you if he is or is not the father of something, your answer, to be exact, should be that he is the father of a son or a daughter. Do you not agree with this? Yes, without a doubt, said Agathon. And the same would be true of a mother? Agathon agreed to this. Allow me still, said Socrates, to ask some questions to make my thought clearer. Is a brother, because of this very quality, the brother of someone, or is he not? He is the brother of someone, replied Agathon, of a brother or a sister. He agreed to this. Try, then, replied Socrates, to demonstrate to us whether love is the love of nothing, or if it is of something. Of something, surely. Keep well in mind what you are saying, and remember what thing love is love of. But before moving on, tell me if love desires the thing that he loves. Yes, certainly. But, replied Socrates, does he possess the thing that he desires and that he loves, or does he not possess it? It is probable, replied Agathon, that he does not possess it. Probable? See if it is not rather necessary that the one who desires lack the thing he desires, or else that he not desire it if he does not lack it. As for me, Agathon, it is admirable to what extent this consequence is necessary in my eyes. And what do you say? I the same. Very well. So, then, will he who is great desire to be great, and he who is strong to be strong? That is impossible, taking into account what we have already agreed upon, because one cannot lack what one possesses. You are right. If he who is strong, replied Socrates, desired to be strong, he who is swift, swift, he who is robust, robust. Perhaps someone might imagine in this and similar cases that those who are strong, swift, and robust, and who possess these qualities, still desire what they possess. To prevent us from falling into such a mistake is why I insist on this point. If you reflect on it, Agathon, you will see that what these people possess, they necessarily possess, whether they want it or not, and how then could they desire it? And if someone were to say to me, "Rich and healthy as I am, I desire wealth and health, and consequently I desire what I possess," we could answer him, "You possess wealth, health, and strength, and if you desire to possess these things, it is for the future, since you already possess them in the present, whether you want it or not." See then, if when you say, "I desire a thing which I have at present," this does not mean, "I desire to possess in the future what I have at this moment." Would you not agree to this? I would agree, replied Agathon. Well then, continued Socrates, is this not to love what one is not sure of possessing, that which one does not yet possess, and to desire to keep for the future what one possesses at present? Without a doubt. Therefore, in this case, as in any other, the one who desires what he is not sure of possessing, what does not exist at present, what he does not possess, what he does not have, what he lacks. This, then, is to desire and to love. Certainly. Let us summarize, added Socrates, what we have just said. Firstly, love is the love of something. Secondly, of a thing that he lacks. Yes, said Agathon. Now remember, replied Socrates, what thing, according to you, love is the love of? If you wish, I will remind you. You said, it seems to me, that concord was re-established among the gods through the love of the beautiful, because there is no love of the ugly. Is this not what you said? I did say it, in effect. And rightly so, my dear friend. And if this is so, love is the love of beauty, and not of ugliness? He agreed to this. Did we not agree that things are loved when one lacks them and does not possess them? Yes. Then love lacks beauty and does not possess it. Necessarily. But what? Do you call that beautiful which lacks beauty? That which in no way possesses beauty? No, certainly. If this is so, replied Socrates, do you still maintain that love is beautiful? I greatly fear, replied Agathon, that I did not understand well what I myself was saying. You speak with prudence, Agathon, but continue for a moment answering me. Does it seem to you that good things are beautiful? It seems so to me. Then love lacks beauty. And if the beautiful is inseparable from the good, love also lacks goodness. It is necessary, Socrates, to conform to what you say, because there is no way to resist you. It is, my dear Agathon, impossible to resist the truth. Resisting Socrates is very simple. But I leave you in peace because I want to recount to you the conversation I had one day with a woman of Mantinea named Diotima. She was a very knowledgeable woman about love and about many other things as well. It was she who prescribed to the Athenians the sacrifices by which they were freed for 10 years from a plague that was threatening them. Everything I know about love I owe to her. I am going to recount to you as best I can, and according to the principles on which Agathon and I have agreed, the conversation I had with her. And to be faithful to your method, Agathon, I will explain first what love is, and then what its effects are. It seems easier to me to faithfully recount the conversation I had with the foreigner. I had said to Diotima almost the same things that Agathon has just said to us, that love was a great god, and love of the beautiful. And she used the same reasons that I have just used against Agathon, to prove to me that love is neither beautiful nor good. I replied to her, "What do you think, Diotima, then? What? Is it possible that love is ugly and bad?" "Oh, speak better," she replied. "Do you believe that everything that is not beautiful is necessarily ugly?" "I certainly do." "And do you believe that one cannot lack science without being absolutely ignorant? Have you not observed that there is a middle ground between science and ignorance?" "What is it?" "It's to have a true opinion without being able to give a reason for it. Do you not know that this is neither being wise, since science must be founded on reasons, nor is it being ignorant, since what partakes of truth cannot be called ignorance? True opinion occupies a middle place between science and ignorance." I confessed to Diotima that she spoke the truth. "Do not affirm, then," she replied, "that everything that is not beautiful is necessarily ugly, and that everything that is not good is necessarily bad. And because you have recognized that love is neither good nor beautiful, do not believe that he is necessarily ugly and bad, but that he occupies a middle ground between these contrary things." "Nevertheless," I replied, "everyone agrees in saying that love is a great god." "What do you mean? Socrates, by everyone? Are they the wise or the ignorant?" "I mean everyone without exception." "How," she replied, smiling, "could he pass for a great god among all those who do not even recognize him as a god?" "Who can those be?" I said to her. "You and I," she replied. "How can you prove it to me?" "It is not difficult, answer me. Do you not say that all the gods are beautiful and happy? Or would you dare to maintain that there is one who is neither happy nor beautiful?" "No, by Jupiter." "Do you not call those happy who possess beautiful and good things?" "Certainly. But you agree that love desires beautiful and good things, and that desire is a sign of privation. In effect, I agree with that." "How then?" replied Diotima. "Is it possible that love is a god, being deprived of what is beautiful and good? That it seems cannot be in any way. Do you not see, consequently, that you too think that love is not a god?" "But what?" I replied, "Is love mortal?" "By no means. But finally, Diotima, tell me what he is." "He is, as I said before, something intermediate between the mortal and the immortal." "But what is he ultimately?" "A great demon, Socrates, because every demon occupies an intermediate place between the gods and men." "What is," I said to her, "the proper function of a demon?" "That of being an interpreter and mediator between the gods and men, to carry the supplications and sacrifices of the latter to heaven, and to communicate to men the orders of the gods and the remuneration for the sacrifices they have offered them. Demons fill the interval that separates heaven from earth. They are the bond that unites the great whole. From them proceeds all the divinatory essence and the art of priests in relation to sacrifices, to mysteries, to enchantments, to prophecies, and to magic. Divine nature, since it never enters into direct communication with man, uses demons to relate and converse with men, whether during waking or during sleep. The one who is wise in all these things is demonic, and the one who is skilled in everything else, in arts and crafts, is a simple operative. Demons are many and of many kinds, and love is one of them." "To what parents does he owe his birth?" I asked Diotima. "I'm going to tell you," she replied, "although the story is long. When the birth of Venus took place, there was a great feast among the gods, in which Poros, plenty, son of Metis, prudence, was present among others. After the meal, Pania, poverty, stood at the door to beg for some leftovers. At that moment, Poros, intoxicated with nectar, because wine was not yet in use, came out of the hall and entered Jupiter's garden, where sleep soon closed his heavy eyes. Then Pania, constrained by her state of destitution, proposed to have a child by Poros. She went to lie with him and became the mother of Love. For this reason, Love became the companion and servant of Venus, because he was conceived the same day she was born. Besides, Love naturally loves beauty, and Venus is beautiful. And now, as the son of Poros and Pania, behold what his inheritance was. On the one hand, he is always poor and far from being beautiful and delicate. As is generally believed, he is thin, dirty, without shoes, without a home, with no other bed than the earth, with nothing to cover himself with, sleeping under the open sky, next to doors or in the streets. In short, just like his mother, he is always fighting with misery. But, on the other hand, according to the nature of his father, he is always on the track of what is beautiful and good. He is manly, daring, persistent, a skillful hunter, anxious to know, always plotting some artifice, learning easily, philosophizing ceaselessly, charming, magical, sophistical. By nature he is neither mortal nor immortal, but on the same day he appears flourishing and full of life, while he is in abundance, and then he is extinguished only to revive, because of his paternal nature. Everything he acquires he constantly squanders, so that he is never rich nor poor. He occupies a middle ground between wisdom and ignorance, because no god philosophizes nor desires to become wise. Since wisdom is inherent in divine nature and in general, the one who is wise does not philosophize. The same thing happens with the ignorant. None of them philosophizes nor desires to become wise, because ignorance precisely produces the terrible effect of persuading those who are not beautiful, nor good nor wise that they possess these qualities, because no one desires the things of which he believes himself to be provided. But, Diotima, who are those who philosophize, if they are neither the wise nor the ignorant? Even children know, she said, that they are those who occupy a middle ground between the ignorant and the wise, and love is of this number. Wisdom is one of the most beautiful things in the world, and since love loves what is beautiful, it is necessary to conclude that love is a lover of wisdom, that is, a philosopher, and as such he is in a middle position between the wise and the ignorant. He owes this to his birth, because he is the son of a wise and rich father, and of a mother who is neither rich nor wise. Such, my dear Socrates, is the nature of this demon. As for the idea you formed, it is not strange that it occurred to you because you believed, as far as I could guess from your words, that love is what is loved and not what loves. This is why, in my opinion, love seemed very beautiful to you, because what is lovable is real beauty, grace, perfection, and the sovereign good. But what loves is of a different nature, as I have just explained. And, well, let it be so, foreigner. You reason very well, but love, being, as you have just said, of what utility is he to men? Precisely that, Socrates, is what I now want to teach you. We know the nature and the origin of love. He is, as you say, the love of the beautiful. But if someone asked us, what is the love of the beautiful, Socrates and Diotima, or speaking more clearly, what does he who loves the beautiful aspire to? To possess it, I replied. This answer demands a new question, said Diotima. What will result for him from possessing the beautiful? and I replied that it was not possible for me to answer this question immediately. But, she replied, if the term were changed, and putting the good in place of the beautiful, I asked you, Socrates, he who loves the good, what does he aspire to? To possess it. And what will result for him from possessing it? And I find the answer easier now. He will become happy. Because believing things good is how happy beings are happy, and there is no need to ask why the one who wants to be happy wants to be so. Your answer seems to satisfy everything. It is true, Diotima. But do you think that this love and this will are common to all men, and that all want to always have what is good, or are you of another opinion? You know, I believe that all have this love and this will. Why then, Socrates, do we not say that all men love, since they all and always love the same thing? Why do we say it of some and not of others? That is something that also surprises me. Well, do not be surprised. We distinguish a particular kind of love, and we call it love, using the name that corresponds to the whole genus, while for the other kinds, we use different terms. I beg you to give an example. Here is one. You know that the word poetry, poesia, has numerous meanings, and it generally expresses the cause that makes a thing, whatever it may be, pass from non-being to being, so that all the works of all the arts are poetry, and all artists and all workers are poets. That is true. And yet, you see that not everyone is called a poet, but they are given other names, and only one kind of poetry taken separately. Music and the art of versifying have received the name of the whole genus. This is the only kind that is called poetry, and those who cultivate it are the only ones who are called poets. That is also true. The same happens with love. In general, it is the desire for what is good and makes us happy, and this is the great and seductive love that is innate in all hearts. But all those who in various directions tend towards this object, businessmen, athletes, philosophers, are not said to love, nor are they called lovers. But only those who devote themselves to a certain kind of love receive the name of the whole genus, and the words to love, love. Lovers are applied only to them. It seems to me that you are right, I said to her. It has been said, she replied, that to seek one's half is to love. But I maintain that to love is to seek neither the half nor the whole of oneself, when neither this half nor this whole is good. And the proof, my friend, is that we consent to having our arm or leg cut off, even though they belong to us, if we believe that these members are affected by an incurable evil. In effect, it is not what is ours that we love, unless we regard as ours and belonging to us as property what is good, and as foreign what is bad, because men only love what is good. Is this not your opinion? By Jupiter, I think as you do. Is it enough to say that men love the good? Yes. But what? Is it not necessary to add that they also aspire to possess the good? It is necessary. And not only to possess it, but also to possess it forever. That is also true. In short, love consists in wanting to always possess the good. Nothing more exact, I replied. If such is love in general, in what particular case does the inquiry and active pursuit of the good take the name of love? Which one is it? Can you tell me? No, Diotima, because if I could tell you, I would not admire your wisdom, nor would I come near you to learn these truths. I am going to tell you, it is the production of beauty, whether through the body or through the soul. What an enigma that requires a diviner to decipher it. I do not understand it. I am going to speak more clearly. All men, Socrates, are capable of engendering through the body and through the soul, and when they have reached a certain age, their nature demands to produce. One cannot produce in ugliness but only in beauty. The union of man and woman is a production, and this production is a divine work, fecundation and generation, to which the mortal being owes its immortality. But these effects cannot be realized in what is discordant, because ugliness cannot agree with anything that is divine. Only beauty can do this. Beauty, with respect to generation, is similar to destiny and Lucina. For this reason, when the fecundating being approaches the beautiful, full of love and joy, he dilates, engenders, produces. On the contrary, if he approaches the ugly, sad, and sluggish, he tightens, twists, contracts, and does not engender, but communicates his fertile germ with pain. Hence, in the fecundating being and full of vigor to produce, this ardent pursuit of the beauty that must free him from the pains of childbirth. Because beauty, Socrates, is not, as you imagine, the object of love. Then what is the object of love? It is the generation and the production of beauty. So be it, I replied. There's no doubt about it, she replied. But why is generation the object of love? Because it is generation that perpetuates the family of animate beings, and gives it the immortality that mortal nature consents to. For, according to what we have already agreed, it is necessary to unite the desire for the good with the desire for immortality, since love consists in aspiring for the good to belong to us always. From this it follows that immortality is equally the object of love. Such were the lessons that Diotima gave me in our conversations about love. She said to me one day, "What, in your opinion, Socrates, is the cause of this desire and this love? Have you not observed in what exceptional state all the volatile and terrestrial animals find themselves when they feel the desire to engender? Do you not see them as sickly, an effect of the amorous agitation that pursues them during mating? And afterwards, when it comes to the sustenance of the offspring, do you not see how the weakest prepare to fight the strongest, even to lose their lives? And how they impose hunger and all kinds of privations on themselves to make it live? With respect to men, it can be believed that it is by reason that they act thus. But the animals, where do these amorous dispositions come from? Could you say?" And I replied to her that I did not know. "And do you expect," she replied, "to ever become wise in love if you ignore a thing like this?" But I repeat, Diotima, that this is the reason why I came to you, because I know that I need your lessons. Explain to me that very thing about which you ask me for an explanation, and everything else that refers to love. "Well then," she said, "if you believe that the natural object of love is that which we have agreed upon many times, my question should not disturb you, because now as before, it is the mortal nature that aspires to perpetuate itself and to become immortal as far as possible, and its only means is birth that substitutes an old individual with a young individual. In effect, although it is said of an individual, from his birth until his death, that he lives and that he is always the same, nevertheless, in reality, he is never in the same state nor in the same development. But everything constantly dies and is reborn in him. His hair, his flesh, his bones, his blood, in a word, his entire body. And not only his body, but also his soul, his habits, his customs, his opinions, his desires, his pleasures, his pains, his fears. All his affections do not always remain the same, but are born and die constantly. But the most surprising thing is that not only do our knowledge born and die in us in the same way, because in this respect too we change constantly, but each of them in particular goes through the same vicissitudes. In effect, what is called reflecting refers to a knowledge that is erased, because oblivion is the extinction of a knowledge, because reflection, forming a new memory in place of the one that leaves, preserves this knowledge in us, although we believe it to be the same. Thus all mortal beings are preserved. They do not subsist absolutely and always the same, as happens with what is divine. But the one who leaves and the one who ages leaves in his place a young individual, similar to what he himself had been. Here, Socrates, is how everything that is mortal participates in immortality, both the body and everything else. As for the immortal being, the same thing happens for a different reason. Do not be surprised if all animate beings value their offspring so much, because the solicitude and the love that animates them has no other origin than this thirst for immortality. After she spoke to me in this manner, I said to her, full of admiration, "Very well, very wise Diotima, but do things really happen like this?" She, with the tone of a consummate sophist, said to me, "Do not doubt it, Socrates, and if you want to reflect now on the ambition of men, their conduct will seem little in conformity with these principles. If you do not notice that men are possessed by the desire to create a name for themselves and to acquire immortal glory in posterity, and that this desire, more than paternal love, is what makes them despise all dangers, compromise their fortune, resist all fatigues, and sacrifice their very lives. Do you think, in effect, that Alcestis would have suffered death in place of Admetus, that Achilles would have sought it to avenge Patroclus, and that your Codrus would have sacrificed himself to assure the reign of his sons, if all of them had not hoped to leave behind this immortal memory of their virtue, which still lives among us? By no means, continued Diotima, but for this immortality of virtue, for this noble glory, there is no one who would not launch himself, I believe, to achieve it. With all the more ardor, the more virtuous the one who pursues it is, because all have love for what is immortal. Those who are fertile in relation to the body love women and incline towards them preferentially, believing they ensure, through the procreation of children, immortality, the perpetuity of their name, and the happiness they imagine in the course of time. But those who are fertile in relation to the spirit," here Diotima, interrupting herself, added, "because there are those who are more fertile in spirit than in body for the things that the spirit is concerned with producing." And what is it that the spirit is concerned with producing? Wisdom and the other virtues that have been born of poets and of all artists endowed with the genius of invention. But the highest and most beautiful wisdom is the one that presides over the government of states and human families, and which is called prudence and justice. When a divine mortal carries in his soul the seed of these virtues since childhood, and having reached the maturity of age desires to produce and engender, he goes from one place to another seeking the beauty in which he will be able to engender, because he could never achieve it in ugliness. In his ardor to produce, he unites himself to beautiful bodies in preference to ugly ones, and if in a beautiful body he finds a beautiful, generous, and well-born soul, this union pleases him sovereignly. Near such a being, he pronounces numerous and eloquent discourses on virtue, on the duties and occupations of the good man, and dedicates himself to instructing him, because the contact and commerce of beauty make him engender and produce that whose seed is already found in him. Absent or present, he always thinks of the object he loves, and both nourish in common the fruits of their union. In this way, the bond and the affection that bind one to the other are much more intimate and much stronger than those of the family, because these children of their intelligence are more beautiful and more immortal, and there is no one who would not prefer such children to any other posterity, if he considers and admires the productions that Homer, Hesiod, and the other poets have left, if he takes into account the renown and the imperishable memory that these immortal children have provided to their parents. Or else if he remembers the children that Lycurgus has left behind in Lacedaemonia, and that have been the glory of that city, and I dare to say of all Greece. Solon, likewise, is honored by you as the father of the laws, and many other great men are also honored in different countries, either in Greece or among the barbarians, because they have produced an infinity of admirable works and created all kinds of virtues. These children have earned them temples, while the children of men, who come from the bosom of a woman, have never made anyone great. Perhaps, Socrates, I have initiated you even into the mysteries of love. But as for the last degree of initiation and the most secret revelations, for which everything I have just said is but a preparation, I do not know if, even well directed, your spirit could elevate itself to them. I, however, will continue without my zeal cooling. Try to follow me as best you can. The one who wants to aspire to this object by the true path must begin from his youth to seek beautiful bodies. Furthermore, if he is well directed, he must love only one, and in him engender and produce beautiful discourses. Then he must come to understand that the beauty found in any body is a sister to the beauty found in all others. In effect, if it is necessary to seek beauty in general, it would be a great folly not to believe that the beauty residing in all bodies is one and identical. Once penetrated by this thought, our man must show himself to be a lover of all beautiful bodies, and divest himself, as of a despicable smallness, of all passion that concentrates on one alone. Afterwards, he must consider the beauty of the soul as more precious than that of the body, so that a beautiful soul, even if it is in a body devoid of perfections, is enough to attract his love and his care, and to ingest in it the discourses most suitable for improving youth. Following thus, he will necessarily be led to contemplate the beauty found in the actions of men and in the laws, to see that this beauty is everywhere identical to itself, and consequently to pay little attention to corporal beauty. From the actions of men he must pass to the sciences to contemplate beauty in them, and then, having a broader idea of the beautiful, he will not be chained like a slave in the narrow love of the beauty of a young man, of a man, or of a single action, but launched into the ocean of beauty, and extending his gaze over this spectacle, he will produce with inexhaustible fecundity the greatest discourses and thoughts of philosophy, until, his spirit secured and enlarged by this sublime contemplation, he only perceives one science, that of the beautiful. Lend me now, Socrates, all the attention of which you are capable, he who in the mysteries of love has elevated himself to the point where we are, after having traversed in convenient order all the degrees of the beautiful and arrived, finally, at the end of the initiation, will perceive like a flash a marvelous beauty that, O Socrates, which was the object of all his previous labors, eternal, uncreated, and imperishable beauty, exempt from increase and diminution, beauty that is not beautiful in one part and ugly in another, beautiful only at one time and not at another, beautiful under one relation and ugly under another, beautiful in one place and ugly in another, beautiful for these and ugly for those, beauty that has nothing sensible like the countenance or the hands, nor anything corporal, that is neither this discourse nor this science, that does not reside in any being different from itself, in an animal, for example, or on the earth, or in the sky, or in anything else, but that exists eternally and absolutely by itself and in itself. All other beauties participate in it, without the birth or destruction of these causing neither the least diminution nor the least increase in that, nor modifying it in anything. When one has elevated oneself from inferior beauties, through a well-understood love of young people, to perfect beauty, and one begins to glimpse it, one almost reaches the end. Because the straight path of love, whether guided by oneself or by another, is to begin with inferior beauties and elevate oneself to supreme beauty, passing, so to speak, through all the degrees of the scale from a single beautiful body to two, from two to all the others, from beautiful bodies to beautiful occupations, from beautiful occupations to beautiful sciences, until from science to science one reaches the science par excellence, which is none other than the science of the beautiful itself, and one concludes by knowing it as it is in itself. "Oh, my dear Socrates," continued the foreign woman of Mantinea, "if this life is worthwhile for anything, it is for the contemplation of absolute beauty, and if you ever come to achieve it, what will you think, compared to it, of gold and ornaments, beautiful children and beautiful young people, the sight of which at present disturbs and enchants you to the point that you and many others, in order to see those you love ceaselessly, to be ceaselessly with them, if this were possible, you would gladly deprive yourselves of eating and drinking, and spend your life treating them and contemplating them continuously? What will we think of a mortal to whom it was given to contemplate pure, simple, unmixed beauty, not clothed in flesh or human colors and the other perishable vanities, but being divine beauty itself? Do you believe it would be an unfortunate lot to have one's eyes fixed on it and to enjoy the contemplation and friendship of such an object? Do you not believe, on the contrary, that this man, being the only one who perceives the beautiful in this world, through the proper organ to perceive it, will be able to create not images of virtue, since he does not unite himself to images, but true virtues, since it is the truth to which he is dedicated? Now then, only he who produces and nourishes true virtue deserves to be loved by God, and if any man should be immortal, it is certainly this one. Such were, my dear Phaedrus, and you who are listening to me, the reasonings of Diotima. They have convinced me, and I in turn try to convince others, that, to obtain such a great good, human nature would hardly find a more powerful auxiliary than love. And so I say that every man should honor love. As for me, I honor everything that relates to him. I make him the object of a very particular cult. I recommend him to others, and at this very moment I have just celebrated, as best I could as I am constantly doing, the power and strength of love. And now, Phaedrus, see if this discourse can be called a eulogy of love, and if not, give it the name that suits you." After Socrates had spoken in this manner, applause was lavished upon him. But Aristophanes was preparing to make some observations, because Socrates in his discourse had alluded to something he had said, when suddenly a noise was heard at the outer door, which was knocked with repeated blows, and it seemed that the voices came from drunken young men and a flute player. "Slaves!" shouted Agathon. "See what that is. If it is one of our friends, tell them to come in, and if not, tell them that we have stopped drinking and are resting." A moment later we heard in the courtyard the voice of Alcibiades, half drunk, and shouting, "Where is Agathon? Take me near Agathon." Then some of his companions and the flute player took him by the arms and led him to the door of our room. Alcibiades stopped, and we saw that his head was adorned with a thick crown of violets and ivy with numerous garlands. "Friends, I greet you," he said. "Do you want to admit to your table a man who is already drunk enough? Or shall we leave after having crowned Agathon, who is the object of our visit? It was impossible for me to come yesterday, but here I am now with my garlands on my head, to crown with them the forehead of the wisest and most beautiful of men, if I am allowed to speak thus. Are you laughing at me because I am drunk? Laugh all you want. I know that I am telling the truth. But let's see, answer. Shall I enter under this condition or shall I not enter? Will you drink with me or not?" Then they shouted from all sides, "Let him enter, let him take a seat." Agathon himself called him. Alcibiades advanced, led by his companions, and occupied in removing his garlands to crown Agathon. He did not see Socrates, even though he was directly in front of him, and he went to place himself between Socrates and Agathon, for Socrates had made room for him to sit down. As soon as Alcibiades sat down, he embraced Agathon and crowned him. "Slaves," said Agathon, "take off Alcibiades' sandals. He will stay on this couch with us and will be the third one." "Gladly," replied Alcibiades, "but who is your third drinker?" At the same time he turned around and saw Socrates. Then he stood up abruptly and exclaimed, "By Hercules! What is this? What? Socrates, I see you here waiting to surprise me according to your custom, appearing suddenly when I least expected it. What have you come to do here today? Why do you occupy this place? How, instead of having placed yourself next to Aristophanes, or any other who is compliant with you, or who strives to be so, have you managed to place yourself so well that I find you next to the most beautiful person in the gathering? I implore your help, Agathon," said Socrates. "The love of this man is not a small embarrassment for me. Since the time I began to love him, I cannot look at or converse with any young person without him. Stung and jealous, giving himself over to incredible excesses, filling me with insults, and luckily he refrains from proceeding to violence. And so, be careful that at this moment he does not get carried away by an outburst of this kind. Try to ensure my tranquility or protect me if he wants to allow himself any violence, because I fear his furious love and jealousy." "There is no peace between us," said Alcibiades, "but I will take revenge at a more opportune time. Now, Agathon, hand me one of your garlands to crown the marvelous head of this man with it. I do not want him to be able to reproach me for not having crowned him as I crowned you, being a man who, when it comes to discourses, triumphs over everyone, not just on one occasion, like you yesterday, but on all of them." While he was explaining himself in this manner, he took some garlands, crowned Socrates, and sat down on the couch. As soon as he was seated, he said, "Well, my friends, what are we doing? You seem excessively composed to me, and I cannot allow it. It is necessary to drink. This is the agreement we made. I appoint myself as king of the feast until you have drunk as is indispensable. Agathon, bring me some large cup if you have one, and if not, slave, give me that bowl that is there, because that bowl already holds more than 8 codile." After having Alcibiades fill it, he drank it first, and then he had it filled for Socrates, saying, "Do not blame me for malice for what I am going to do, because Socrates can drink as much as he wants and will never be seen drunk." The slave filled the cup, and Socrates drank. Then Eryximachus, taking the floor, "What shall we do, Alcibiades? Shall we continue drinking without speaking or singing, and content ourselves with doing the same as those who only quench their thirst?" Alcibiades replied, "I greet you, Eryximachus, worthy son of the best and wisest of fathers." "I greet you too," replied Eryximachus. "But what shall we do?" "Whatever you order, because it is necessary to obey you. A physician is worth as much as many men alone. Order then what you want." "Then listen," said Eryximachus. "Before your arrival, we had agreed that each of us, following a rigorous turn, should praise love as best he could, beginning from the right. We have all fulfilled our task, and it is fair that you, who have said nothing and who have not drunk any less because of it, should fulfill yours in turn. When you have finished, you will assign to Socrates the theme that seems best to you. He will assign it to his neighbor on the right, and so on." "All of that is very well, Eryximachus," said Alcibiades, "but to want a drunken man to dispute in eloquence with composed and cold-blooded people would be a very unequal contest. Besides, my dear friend, do you believe what Socrates said before about my jealous character? Or do you believe the opposite is the truth? Because if in his presence I venture to praise anyone other than him, be it a god or a man, he will not be able to restrain himself from hitting me." "Speak better," exclaimed Socrates. By Neptune, do not say that, Socrates, because I will not praise anyone but you in your presence." "Well then, so be it," said Eryximachus. "Give us, if you wish, the eulogy of Socrates." "What, Eryximachus? Do you want me to throw myself upon this man and take revenge on him in front of you?" "Halt, young man," interrupted Socrates. "What is your intention? Do you want to make ironic praises of me? Explain yourself." "I will tell the truth if you consent." "Do I consent? I demand it." "I shall obey you," replied Alcibiades. "But you must do the following. If I say anything that is not true, interrupt me if you wish, and do not be afraid to contradict me, because I will not knowingly tell any lie. If, despite everything, I do not recount the facts in a very exact order, do not be surprised, because in the state I am in, it would not be strange for me not to give a clear and orderly account of your peculiarities. To praise Socrates, my friends, I will use comparisons. Socrates will perhaps believe that I intend to make fun, but my images will be aimed at truth and not at mockery. Firstly, I say that Socrates resembles those Silenuses that are displayed in the workshops of statuaries, and that the artists represent with a flute or pipe in their hand. If you separate the two parts of which these statues are composed, you will find inside the image of some divinity. I say more, I say that Socrates resembles the satyr Marsyas more particularly. As for the exterior, Socrates, you cannot deny the resemblance, and as for the rest, listen to what I am going to say. Are you not a brazen mocker? If you deny it, I will present witnesses. Are you not also a flute player, and more admirable than Marsyas? He enchanted men by the power of the sounds that his mouth drew from his instruments, and the same thing is done today by anyone who performs the compositions of this satyr. And I maintain that those played by Olympus are compositions of Marsyas, his master. Thanks to the divine character of such compositions, whether it is a skillful artist or a bad flute player who performs them, only they have the virtue of captivating us too, and of making known to those who need initiations and gods. The only difference that can exist in this regard between Marsyas and you, Socrates, is that without the help of any instrument and only with speeches you do the same. Let another speak, even the most skillful orator, and he makes, so to speak, no impression on us. But let you speak, or someone else repeat your speeches, however little versed he may be in the art of speaking, and all listeners, men, women, children, all feel convinced and enraptured. As for me, my friends, if I did not fear seeming completely drunk, I would attest to you with an oath the extraordinary effect that his speeches have produced and still produce on me. When I hear him, my heart beats more violently than that of the Corybantes. His words make me shed tears. And I also see many of the listeners experience the same emotions. Hearing Pericles and our great orators, I have seen that they are eloquent, but they have not made me experience anything similar. My soul was not troubled or indignant against itself because of its servitude. But when I listen to this Marsyas, the life I lead has often seemed unbearable to me. You will not deny, Socrates, the truth of what I am saying, and I know that at this very moment, if I lent an ear to your speeches, I would not resist it, and they would produce the same impression on me. This man forces me to agree that, lacking many things myself, I despise my own affairs to concern myself with those of the Athenians. Thus I am forced to flee from him, covering my ears like one who escapes from the sirens. If it were not for this, I would remain seated by his side until the end of my days. This man awakens in me a feeling of which I would not be believed to be very capable, and that is shame. Yes, only Socrates makes me blush because I am conscious of not being able to oppose anything to his advice, and yet, after I separate from him, I do not feel strong enough to renounce popular favor. I flee from him, I try to avoid him, but when I see him again, I am ashamed in his presence of having contradicted my words with my conduct, and many times I would prefer, I believe, that he did not exist. And yet, if this happened, I am convinced that I would be even more unhappy, so that I do not know what is happening to me with this man. Such is the impression that the flute of this satyr produces on me and also on many others. But I want to convince you even more of the accuracy of my comparison and of the extraordinary power he exercises over those who listen to him. And you must understand that none of us truly knows Socrates. Since I have begun, I will tell you everything. You see the ardor that Socrates manifests for beautiful young men, how eagerly he seeks them, and to what extent he is in love with them. You also see that he ignores everything, that he knows nothing, or at least that he plays the role of not knowing it. Is all this not characteristic of a Silenus? Entirely. He has all the exterior that statuaries give to Silenus. But open him up, companions of the banquet. What treasures you will not find in him. Know that the beauty of a man is the most indifferent object for him. It is impossible to imagine to what extent he disdains it, as well as wealth and the other advantages envied by the vulgar. Socrates looks upon them all as worthless, and upon us ourselves as if we were nothing, and he spends his whole life mocking and jesting with everyone. But when he speaks seriously and finally shows his interior, I do not know if others have seen the beauties he contains, but I have seen them, and I have found them so divine, so precious, so great, and so enchanting that it seemed impossible for me to resist Socrates. Believing at first that he was falling in love with my beauty, I congratulated myself on it, and taking it for good fortune, I believed that a marvelous means was presented to me of winning him over, counting on the fact that, by pleasing his desires, I would surely obtain from him that he communicate all his wisdom to me. On the other hand, I had a high concept of my external qualities. With this objective, I began by sending away my tutor, in whose presence I usually saw Socrates, and I found myself alone with him. I must tell you the whole truth. Pay attention to me, and you, Socrates, reproach me if I fail in accuracy. I was left alone, my friends, with Socrates, and I always expected him to touch upon one of those points that passion inspires in lovers when they find themselves without witnesses with the loved object. And in this I flattered myself and took pleasure, but all my hopes vanished entirely. Socrates spent the whole day conversing with me in the manner he was accustomed to, and then retired. Following this, I challenged him to do gymnastic exercises, hoping by this means to gain some ground. We exercised and wrestled many times together and without witnesses. What can I tell you? Not even by those means did I advance anything. Unable to achieve it in this way, I decided to attack him vigorously. Once I had started, I did not want to leave it until I knew what to expect. I invited him to dinner as lovers do who lay a trap for those they love. At first he refused, but in the end he concluded by yielding. He came, but the moment the meal ended he wanted to retire. A kind of shame prevented me from holding him back. But another time I set a new trap for him. After dinner, I prolonged our conversation until well into the night. And when he wanted to leave, I compelled him to stay on the pretext of it being very late. He lay down on the same couch where he had eaten. This couch was near mine, and the two of us were alone in the room. Up to here there is nothing that I cannot recount in front of everyone, but with respect to what I have to say, you will not hear it without me announcing that proverb that children and drunks tell the truth, and that furthermore, to conceal an admirable trait of Socrates in the act of praising him would seem unjust to me. On the other hand, I consider myself in the case of those who, having been bitten by a viper, do not want, it is said, to talk about it except to those who have experienced the same damage, as the only ones capable of conceiving and listening to everything they have done and said during their suffering. And I, who feel bitten by something even more painful and in the most sensitive spot, which is called heart, soul, or whatever you want. I, who am bitten and wounded by the reasonings of philosophy, whose darts are sharper than the sting of a viper, when they affect a young and well-born soul, and which make it say or do 1,000 extravagant things. And seeing, on the other hand, round me Phaedrus, Agathon, Eryximachus, Pausanias, Aristodemus, Aristophanes, leaving aside Socrates and the others, afflicted like me with the mania and rage of philosophy, I do not hesitate to continue my story in front of all of you, because you will know how to excuse my actions then and my words now. But with respect to the slaves and all profane and uncultured men, put a triple door to their ears. As soon as, my friends, the light was extinguished and the slaves retired, I thought that I should not beat around the bush with Socrates, and that I should tell him my thoughts frankly. I touched him and said, "Socrates, are you sleeping?" "No," he replied. "Well, do you know what I think?" "What?" "I think," I replied, "that you are the only lover worthy of me, and it seems to me that you do not dare to reveal your feelings to me. I would believe myself to be irrational if I did not try to please you on this occasion, as on any other, in which I could oblige you, either in my own favor or in favor of my friends. No thought torments me as much as that of perfecting myself as much as possible, and I do not see any person whose help can be more useful to me than yours. By refusing something to a man like you, I would fear much more being criticized by the wise than being criticized by the vulgar and the ignorant, by conceding everything to you." To this discourse Socrates replied with his habitual irony, "My dear Alcibiades, if what you say about me is accurate, if, in effect, I have the power to make you better, in truth you do not seem unskillful to me, and you have discovered in me a marvelous beauty, and one much superior to yours. In this regard, wanting to unite yourself to me and exchange your beauty for mine, you seem to understand your interests very well, since instead of the appearance of the beautiful, you want to acquire the reality and give me copper for gold. But, good young man, look closer, lest you be mistaken about what I am worth. The eyes of the spirit only begin to become far-sighted when those of the body weaken, and you have not yet reached this point." "Such is my opinion, Socrates," I replied. "I have said nothing that I have not thought, and it is up to you to make the resolution that seems most convenient for you and for me." "Well," he replied, "we will think about it, and we will do what is most convenient for both of us, both on this point and on everything else." After this dialogue, I thought that the shot I had fired had hit the mark. Without giving him time to add a word, I got up wrapped in this cloak you see me in, because it was winter. I slipped under the worn cloak of this man, and embracing such a divine and marvelous person, I spent the whole night next to him. In everything I have said so far, Socrates, I believe you will not deny me. And well, after such attempts he remained insensible, and has had nothing but disdain and contempt for my beauty, and has done nothing but insult it. And yet I supposed it to be of some merit, my friends. Yes, be judges of Socrates' insolence. I call the gods and goddesses as witnesses. I left his side just as I would have left the bed of my father or my older brother. Since then, you must already suppose what the state of my spirit must have been. On the one hand, I considered myself despised. On the other, I admired his character, his temperance, his strength of soul, and it seemed impossible to find a man who was equal to him in wisdom and in self-control, so that I could neither get angry with him nor do without seeing him, although I saw that I had no means of winning him over, because I knew that he was more invulnerable to money than Ajax was to iron, and the only attraction to which I thought he was susceptible had no effect on him. Thus, submitted to this man, more than a slave can be to his master, I wandered here and there, not knowing what course of action to take. Such were my first relations with him. Afterwards, we found ourselves together in the expedition against Potidaea, and we were messmates. There I saw Socrates excel, not only with respect to me, but with respect to all the others, in his patience in bearing fatigue. If provisions happened to run out, which was very common on campaign, Socrates endured hunger and thirst with more courage than any of us. If we were in abundance, he knew how to enjoy it better than anyone. Without having a taste for drinking, he drank more than the others if he was pressed, and you will be surprised if I tell you that no one ever saw him drunk. And of this I believe you have proof right now. In that country the winter is very rigorous, and the way Socrates resisted the cold is even prodigious. In times of hard frost, when no one dared to go out, or at least no one went out without being well wrapped and well shod, and with their feet wrapped in felt and lambskins, he went and came with the same cloak that he was accustomed to wear, and walked with bare feet with more ease than all of us who were shod, to the point that the soldiers looked at him askance, believing that he intended to despise them. This is how Socrates conducted himself in the army. But see also what this brave man did and endured during this same expedition. The trait is worthy of recounting. One morning we saw that he was standing, meditating on something. Not finding what he was looking for, he did not move from the spot and continued reflecting in the same attitude. It was already noon, and our soldiers observed him and said to each other that Socrates had been in an ecstasy since the morning. Finally, towards evening, the Ionian soldiers, after having eaten, carried their campaign beds to the place where he was, to sleep in the cool air, because it was summer then, and at the same time to observe if he would spend the night in the same attitude. In effect, he continued standing until sunrise. Then he addressed his prayer to this star and retired. Do you want to know how he behaves in combat? In this too, justice must be done to him. In that feat of arms, in which the generals attributed all the glory to me, he was the one who saved my life. Seeing me wounded, he did not want to abandon me in any way, and he freed both me and my companions from falling into the hands of the enemy. Then, Socrates, I strongly urge the generals to award you the prize for valor, and this is a fact that you will not be able to deny me or suppose it false. But the generals, out of consideration for my rank, wanted to give it to me, and you yourself strongly pressed them to decree it in my favor. Also, my friends, I must mention the conduct that Socrates observed in the retreat of our army after the defeat of Delium. I was on horseback, and he was on foot and with heavy weapons. Our troops were beginning to flee everywhere, and Socrates was retreating with Laches. I found them and exhorted them to be brave, that I would not abandon them. Here I got to know Socrates better than in Potidaea, because finding myself on horseback, I did not need to be as concerned about my personal safety. I immediately observed how much he surpassed Laches in presence of mind, and I saw that there, as if he were in Athens, Socrates walked proudly and with a disdainful gaze, making use of your expression, Aristophanes. He calmly considered both our own troops and the enemy, showing from afar by his demeanor that he would not be attacked with impunity. In this way, he and his companion retreated safe and sound, because in war, one does not usually attack the one who shows such dispositions, but rather one pursues those who flee at full speed. I could cite a large number of facts no less admirable in praise of Socrates, but perhaps others similar to them could be found in other men. But what makes Socrates worthy of particular admiration is that no one else can be found who resembles him, neither among the ancients nor among our contemporaries. For example, Brasidas or any other can be compared to Achilles, Pericles to Nestor or Antenor, and there are other figures among whom it would be easy to recognize similarities, but no one will be found, neither among the ancients nor among the moderns, who remotely approaches this man or his discourses or his eccentricities. unless he and his discourses are compared, as I already did, not to a man, but to the Silenuses and the Satyrs, because I forgot to say, when I began, that his discourses also perfectly resemble the Silenuses when they are opened. In effect, despite the desire one has to hear Socrates, what he says seems at first sight entirely grotesque. The expressions with which he clothes his thought are coarse, like the skin of an impudent satyr. He speaks to you only of donkeys with pack saddles, of blacksmiths, shoemakers, tanners, and it seems that he always says the same thing in the same terms, so that there is no ignorant or foolish person who does not feel the temptation to laugh. But let his discourses be opened, let them be examined in their interior, and it will immediately be found that only they are full of meaning, and then that they are truly divine, and that they contain the noblest images of virtue. In a word, everything that one who wants to become a good man must keep in sight. Here, my friends, is what I praise in Socrates, and also what I accuse him of, because I have combined with my praises the history of the outrages he has done to me, and I have not been the only one who has been treated in this way. In the same case are Charmides, son of Glaucon, Euthydemus, son of Diocles, and many others whom he has also deceived, pretending to want to be their lover, when he has rather played the role of the greatly loved person towards them. And so, you, Agathon, take advantage of these examples. Do not let yourself be deceived by this man. Let my sad experience enlighten you, and do not imitate the senseless one who, according to the proverb, only becomes wise at his own expense. When Alcibiades stopped speaking, the people began to laugh at his frankness, and at the fact that he was still in love with Socrates. The latter, then taking the floor, said, "I imagine that you have been little expansive today, Alcibiades. Otherwise, you would not have artfully and with a long detour of words concealed the true motive of your discourse, a motive of which you only spoke incidentally at the end, as if your only object were to set Agathon and me against each other, because you claimed that I must love you and not love anyone else, and that Agathon should only be loved by you alone. But your artifice has not been hidden from us. We have clearly seen where the fable of the satyrs and the Silenuses tended. And so, my dear Agathon, let us foil his plan, and arrange it so that no one can separate us from one another." "In truth," said Agathon, "I believe you are right, Socrates, and I am sure that his having come to place himself between you and me was only to separate us. But he has gained nothing, because right now I am going to place myself next to you." "Very well," replied Socrates. "Come here to my right." "Oh, Jupiter!" exclaimed Alcibiades, "how much this man makes me suffer! He imagines he has the right to give me the law in everything. Allow, at least, marvelous Socrates, that Agathon place himself between the two of us." "Impossible," said Socrates, "because you have just made my eulogy, and now it is my turn to make the eulogy of my neighbor on the right. If Agathon places himself on my left, he will certainly not make my eulogy again before I have made his. Let this young man come, my dear Alcibiades, and do not envy him the praises that I eagerly desire to make of him." "There is no way for me to stay here, Alcibiades," exclaimed Agathon. "I resolutely want to change places in order to be praised by Socrates." "This is what always happens," said Alcibiades. "Wherever Socrates is found, only he has a seat next to the beautiful young men. And right now, see what a simple and plausible pretext he has found for Agathon to come and place himself next to him." Agathon was getting up to go and sit next to Socrates, when a crowd of young people appeared at the door at the very moment one of the guests opened it to leave, and penetrating into the room, they took seats at the table. There was then great commotion, and in the general disorder the guests were forced to drink excessively. Aristodemus added that Eryximachus, Phaedrus, and some others had retired to their homes. He himself fell asleep, because the nights were very long, and did not wake up until dawn at the crowing of the rooster after a long sleep. When he opened his eyes, he saw that some guests were sleeping and others had left. Only Agathon, Socrates, and Aristophanes were awake and were simultaneously draining a large cup, which they passed from hand to hand, from right to left. At the same time, Socrates was discussing with them. Aristodemus could not remember this conversation, because since he had been sleeping, he had not heard the beginning of it. But he told me in summary that Socrates had forced his interlocutors to recognize that the same man must be a tragic poet and a comic poet, and that when one knows how to treat tragedy according to the rules of art, one must also know how to treat comedy. Forced to agree to this, and being halfway through the discussion, they began to fall asleep. Aristophanes fell asleep first, and then Agathon, when it was already very late in the day. Socrates, seeing both of them asleep, got up and left accompanied as usual by Aristodemus. From there he went to the Lyceum, bathed, and spent the rest of the day in his usual occupations, not entering his house until late to rest. Thank you for listening to this audiobook until the end. If you enjoyed the content, we invite you to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This way, you won't miss our upcoming publications.